we're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law, failing which
Pierre Poilievre is trying to import irresponsible American-style gun laws into our country. Tariffs are not the only American policies that are threatening our economy and our society. They're also threatening the safety of our communities. Criminals are taking advantage of irresponsible American gun laws and their weak border enforcement to bring illegal guns into Canada. Large American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm our children. My government will act. And today we're announcing our plan to fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong. A plan to make Canada secure, to make Canada strong. Well, criminals are trying to illegally import guns to Canada. Pierre Poilievre is trying to import irresponsible American-style gun laws into our country. You can't be serious about being tough on crime if you're not willing to be tough on guns. You can't be serious about stopping intimate partner violence without being serious about gun control. When we know from our own tragic history how often guns are involved. We are taking action, all while respecting the long-standing traditions of hunting and sports shooting and respecting the traditions of Indigenous peoples. If elected, my government will automatically revoke gun licenses for individuals convicted of violence offenses, including intimate partner violence. We will strengthen firearms licensing and the so-called yellow and red flag laws that keep weapons out of the hands of those who are a risk to themselves or others. We will invest in the RCMP's National Forensic Laboratories in Ottawa and Surrey and the Saskatchewan Ballistics Lab to increase our capacity to track down guns used in crimes. We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of assault-style firearms and leave the classification of new firearm models to the RCMP, to the experts, not to the gun industry. No new guns should come into this country before they have been examined and classified by those experts. We must stem the tide of illegal guns and drugs coming across our border with the United States. That's why the government is now deploying scanners, drones, helicopters, additional personnel, and canine teams at our border. And we will build on this foundation by recruiting 1,000 more RCMP personnel and increasing the pay for cadet recruits. We will train 1,000 new 1,000 new CBSA officers and support their work with even more scanners, more drones, and more canine teams. We will allow police to seize fentanyl and other contraband through Canada Post Mail. We will strengthen the Public Prosecution Services of Canada to hold those who profit from criminal activity to account and to repay the people who put themselves on the line, every day to protect our well-being. We will invest in theirs. We will expand early retirement eligibility for first responders, firefighters, paramedics, correctional services employees, border services officers, parliamentary protection officers, search and rescue, and we will support their physical and mental health. My government will not only strengthen Canadian law enforcement, we will also strengthen the criminal code and bail laws to toughen the consequences for those threatening the safety of Canadians. To ensure that Canadians feel safe in their homes and communities, we will make bail harder to get for those charged with stealing cars using violence, stealing cars for a criminal organization, for home invasion, and for certain human trafficking and smuggling offenses. At bail hearings linked to these crimes, we will reverse the burden of proof, meaning that the accused will have to prove that they do not represent a threat to public safety. We will also prohibit someone charged with an offense that involves violence or organized crime from possessing a weapon when they're released. We will toughen sentencing guidelines for repeat offenders charged in relation to stolen cars and to violent and organized crime. We will protect the victims of sexual violence and intimate partner violence by making murder motivated by hate, including femicide, a constructive first-degree offense. We will make producing and distributing non-consensual sexual deep fakes a criminal offense. And we will increase penalties on summary conviction for sexual assault and the distribution of intimate images without consent. You know, new online platforms have created new threats, including and perhaps especially for children. And as much as we as parents want to protect our kids, we can't always be there. We can't always be looking over our kids' shoulders to see what they're doing or what they're exposed to online. And so while protecting children is first and foremost a parent's responsibility, it is also a collective responsibility. And with the support of Canadians, my government will act to protect children online and bring those who seek to harm them to justice. We will first introduce legislation to protect children from online exploitation and extortion. We will provide new funding to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. We will give more tools to law enforcement and to prosecutors. We will raise the maximum sentence for child luring. And when it concerns harms to children, we'll extend both the amount of time data will be preserved and the period during which charges can be brought forth for these crimes. Unfortunately, the rising tide of hatred online is overflowing onto our streets. Violence and intimidation have no place in Canada. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia must be denounced in the strongest possible terms. And I am appalled by the horrific incidents and numerous incidents in our country in recent years. I go to church myself, and I've reflected on stories like what has happened with the Temple Sinai Synagogue, what they've had to face right here in the GTA. Its signage has been repeatedly set on fire. Its congregants now have to pass through metal security bollards before they can even enter. And its leaders have had to set up active shooter drills to prepare for the worst. I've heard this advocacy directly from the community, including from last month's National Anti-Semitism Forum. There are also far too many violent Islamophobic attacks on mosques and other places of worship and community centers across this city and across this country. And I'll be clear. If any Canadian can be threatened when simply exercising a fundamental freedom, then all of our freedoms as Canadians are at risk. And we refuse, my government refuses to allow Canadians to feel threatened when visiting their place of worship, when sending their kids to school, when going to a community center. And that's why we will make it a criminal offense to intentionally and willfully obstruct access to any place of worship, to any school, any community center. And we will make it a criminal offense to intimidate or threaten those attending services at these locations. Finally, while tackling crime is essential, it is, of course, better to prevent it. It starts by making sure that every child in this country can grow up safe, healthy, have a chance at achieving their potential.
Conservatives are standing here today based on the principle that your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law, failing which one of our party's MPs will put forward such a bill. It will amend Section 34.2 of the Criminal Code, which right now says that you can defend yourself based on 9 very complicated and vague conditions. Now look, if you're defending your house, you don't have time to think through 9 different conditions. You have one condition: to protect yourself and your kids. And it is wrong for the law, for the police, and for judges to apply a complicated, indecipherable legal doctrine against you when you were only doing what is right. Our amendment instead will change Section 34.2 of the Criminal Code to say that the use of force, including lethal force, is presumed reasonable against an individual who unlawfully enters a house and poses a threat to the safety of anyone inside. The proposed amendment is reasonable and prudent. It applies only to the unlawful entry of a home and preserves proportionality. Simply put, it means you have the right to use force to defend your home and your family against someone who threatens you and who has entered illegally.